Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Gentech PC product showcase. Today we're going to be bringing you a Titan size review with the MSI GT63 Titan. Now this is the little brother to the MSI GT73 Titan. Up front, the major differences are going to be that the GT63 is going to be on a traditional 15.6 inch size screen versus the GT73, which is running a 17 inch screen. Now the great thing is no matter which platform you choose, you're going to be getting the same NVIDIA RTX 2080 for that high-end gaming power, and of course our new high-end Intel CPUs for that CPU crunching power. So we will go ahead and stick with our traditional review format today, and we'll go ahead and start everything off with our unboxing. So this laptop will ship in a double box procedure, so we're going to have the plain cardboard outside box to protect it during shipping and make it more obscure. And then we have a pretty plain inside box, which is just black and orange, and those are the MSI gaming colors. The layout of the inside of the box has the laptop pretty much right front and center on the right side of the box. It has foam inserts on the left and right hand sides to hold it center and keep it from getting bounced around and crushed, with additional foam on top. That way there's no dead space so the laptop cannot move around at all. We have a protective cover over the laptop so it can't get scratched. And furthermore, there's a little sticky piece of plastic on top that gives it extra protection. After that, on the bottom side, we just have our little warranty manual. And of course, the driver's discs used to be a thing, but nowadays you just download those off the internet. On the left-hand side, this is where we're going to find our power adapter. So you're going to get your adapter cable, which will be unique for your region, and of course the actual power brick itself. With that fully out of the bag, here's a close-up of the power pin connector. And this is a unique design for MSI, so that won't work on your other laptops. And an up-close look at the specs. This power adapter puts out 330 watts of power. Now moving forward into the size and weight portion of our review, we have the laptop on the scale at 6 pounds and 12 ounces. Now in most cases, you'll also be taking your power adapter with you, and that brings the total carry weight up to 9 pounds and 9 ounces. For measurements, we have quarters at the front and back side for scale, and we of course have a ruler for the actual measurements. Now the rear of the laptop is about 1 3/4 inches as far as how high that comes up off the table. The front side of the laptop is a little bit shorter, closer to 1.5 inches. Alright, so now it's time for us to go take a look at the inside of the laptop. As you can see, we have it powered on. We have that oversized cleaning cloth that you get to hold on to. We see our screen and our RGB backlit keyboard. Down to the bottom right hand side, we have the sticker there that goes over most of the brand name features. Of all of these, the ones you'll notice the most is either going to be that 4K screen, which is optional, and we're not using that on this review model. We have instead the 1920 by 1080p 144Hz screen with the 7 millisecond refresh, which is for those who want performance, and the 4K is for those who want the niceties of the higher resolution. Now the SteelSeries keyboard, of course, is fully controllable through software. We'll get over that in a little bit. And of course, there's no denying the other big reason you're here looking at this laptop is going to be the NVIDIA RTX 2080. The important thing to mention here is that this is the full powered version of that video card, not the Max-Q edition that most other laptops will use. Max-Q is the laptop version where they've reduced the power consumption and the heat, which helps it be fit into a laptop form factor. So you can't use the full power version unless your laptop is dedicated to performance and built around that. Now as we finish roaming around the other interfaces on the front, we have our integrated microphones and HD webcam. We have our oversized touchpad, left and right click buttons that are separated, which is great. And last and not least, before we go to the inside of the system and look at our configuration and do performance, let's look at our connectivity. So the right side of the laptop has an SD card reader near the front and 3 USB 3.1 Generation 2 Type A ports. The back side of the laptop does have connectivity, unlike a lot of other models. We have out here the RJ45 port for local network connectivity. We have our USB 3.1 Generation 2 Type-C connector, the HDMI output, the mini display port, and of course our power connector for charging and running off of mains power. So as you can see, MSI has you very well covered as far as outputs and USB connectivity, and we still have one side left to go over. So over to the left-hand side, this is where we're going to find our Kensington lock port. If you want to lock down the laptop, we have one last USB 2.0 port, so one old school USB port left, and we have not two, but four 3.5 millimeter audio connections, one for your headphones, one for your microphone, and a line in and line out. So you can definitely connect this laptop up and make it an easy desktop replacement with all that connectivity. So one last tour of the dimensions, size, look, and feel of this laptop before we move into our system. So into the system, here we are with our device manager, and we can look at the hardware that's installed. We see our killer for both wired and wireless networking, which is great. The Intel Core i7-8750H for our CPU. We know we have for our GPU, that's going to be the NVIDIA RTX 2080. And of course, like we mentioned earlier in this review, we're using the 1080p screen with the 144 Hz refresh rate. If you're interested in looking up that monitor panel, here's the ID for that, so you can Google it. So one thing a lot of people neglect to mention with a high refresh rate screen is that you have to have a video card and a CPU powerful enough to actually get your games up to that frame rate to take advantage of it. So here you are with the GT63 Titan, finally a combination that can do that for you. So before we move into the benchmark section and we test the temperatures, we need to know what we're starting with. So right now our CPU is averaging about 70 degrees Celsius, and our video card's close to about 45 degrees Celsius. So remember those temperatures as our baseline. A real quick look at some of the software offerings. Here is going to be the software for controlling our RGB backlit keyboard. There's going to be a ton of presets in there. You might find one you really like, so you can just play around with those. But of course, if you want to take the time, you can go in there and fully customize this to look like anything you want. So controlling your lighting is a great thing to do, but the MSI Dragon Center gives you a lot more than that. You get a cool heads-up display that tells you what's going on with your system right now. It gives you an easy way to see if something's going wrong and the system's under load when it shouldn't be, and keep track of your temperatures and performance. It's also a lot more than just monitoring. It lets you make system changes. You get some custom features in here like going over your fan profiles, and you can select presets, or you can go as far as building your own custom fan profile. So there's a lot of customization here. The other thing it does for you is it just lets you do a lot of the common Windows things, such as setting your DPI, without having to go into the obscure Windows control panel. You can just do it all from one spot. So be sure to take the time and look at the Dragon Center if you end up getting a GT63. There's definitely a couple of cool things in here you're going to want to take a look at. So back to getting our baseline benchmarks before we move into the performance testing. Here's a couple of quick looks at our screen as far as screen viewing angles. And what we're doing right now is we're testing our ambient noise levels at the idle state. So about 25.6 decibels on that side. The other side is currently reading about the same, but it'll be interesting to see once we put the benchmarks up if one fan can go faster than the other for independent control of CPU and GPU temperatures. Now as far as surface temperatures, we have our infrared thermal camera here, and we can just take a look at our hotspots on the laptop. So of course what we're looking for here is to see that the heat is being properly disposed out of the system, and we don't want to see anything hot to the touch because that makes for an uncomfortable experience, especially if you're not using an external mouse and keyboard. So interestingly enough, we do see that one spot near the top right hand side of the touchpad that's a little bit warmer than usual. That's not where your hand will be sitting, so that might not be too much of an effect, but we'll have to take a look at it again under load and see how much hotter that gets. The rest of the system's looking really well, and we do see that the exhaust ports are doing their job, and that's where most of the heat is focused. Alright, so now the benchmarks are underway. This is going to put our system under load, and we're going to go back and check those figures again and see what's happened. Now we can see the fans have definitely gone up in speed, and thus the noise has gone up. We're now closer to about 60 decibels of noise. The other side reading closer to the 70s. So yes, the fans are independently controlled, and the system is smart enough to only spin up the fans that are needed, which is a good thing. So back to the thermal imaging, we want to see how things are going now with the system under load. Now the heat dissipation pattern is the same. We see the exact same hot spots. Definitely wanted to look at the touchpad, and it looks like it hasn't actually gotten any hotter than it was before, and that's a good sign. So that means it doesn't get uncomfortable to the touch. The exhaust ports on the back are going to be important. We can see the heat is definitely coming out of the system and even onto the table. You see the streaks on the table where the heat's been thrown out of the laptop. Interestingly enough, the temperatures aren't reading too much higher here, so we'll have to see how the inside temperatures do when we look at the scores after the benchmarks. And for those wondering, the power adapter, sometimes those can get really hot. As you can see, this one's not doing too bad. So here is some important numbers. Our performance score for 3D Mark Firestrike is 19,348, which is an outstanding score, especially for a 15.6-inch laptop. How did the internal thermals do? So here's the results on that. Our CPU is about 95 degrees Celsius when you average all the cores together, which is right in line with most of our other high-performance laptops we've seen come out this year. The GPU down towards the bottom here, he only got up to about 83 degrees Celsius, which is also a very nice score. So the temperatures are not a problem. The system is handling that stuff under load. Also, don't forget, if you want to see lower temperatures at the expense of a little bit more noise, you can always go into the Dragon Center and kick up the fans an extra notch. Now continuing onward with the rest of our benchmarks, Cinebench R15 is up now. We'll let this run through and we'll check back with our frames per second score at the end. So checking in now with a score of 111.88 frames per second. We do have our ranking down below, but usually it's the frames per second is the number you want to look at, especially if you're comparing this to our other reviews. Now it's time for a copyright-free speaker test. Now moving along into our final part of our review, it's going to be the disassembly of the system. Looking at the bottom of the laptop, we see the traditional MSI design with the very large center intake for the air. That's where everything gets pulled in before it gets pulled through the fans and then pushed out the back of the laptop. So for the initial disassembly, it's 6 screws, all of the same size to remove around the perimeter, so not too bad to get the bottom bay door off. So here is your first glance at the inside of the system. It doesn't look too crowded in here, and we have access to a couple of important things. So here we have, for example, our wireless or Bluetooth card. We we can see the giant dual cooling solution with the heat pipes that go across both the CPU and the GPU from both sides. A little subwoofer speaker. We do have, importantly, just next to that, the system RAM slots that are not occupied, so we can add more RAM to the system pretty easy. This is the M2 form factor SSD for the very fast storage. And we still have, at least for now, a mechanical storage drive for our mass storage needs, but probably that'll be SSDs in the near future since they're getting bigger and cheaper all the time. Moving to the next steps of the disassembly, we've taken all that equipment out. So here's that 2.5-inch mechanical drive. As you can see, that's a Seagate Barracuda. We took the cooling fans and the cooling solution, the heat pipes, off. And you can see that that's a really big and robust fan. So the heat pipe array comes together as one single unit, even though it cools both the CPU and the GPU, they are combined. Our M2 SSD. And here's the bottom of that. You can see the thermal pads and the thermal paste. And underneath of that, you can see the gigantic NVIDIA RTX 2080 at the top, fitting into that MXM slot. And then just down below it is going to be our Intel CPU. Now we could stop here, but of course we're going to go to the next level and take it apart even more. So we're definitely to the point of do not try this at home at this point. We had to take out several more screws. We've really got a lot of different pieces laying around at this point, so we have to keep careful track of that. We're professionals. We do this all the time, and of course we do it for our viewers. So as it sits right now, there's a couple more screws around the perimeter holding the motherboard to the chassis. We'll take those out and we'll see what's on the other side. So more screws come out and now everything is free to lift up. And is there anything hidden on the other side of the rainbow? In this case, yes, there is. There is one more system RAM slot over here. So if you really want this system fully loaded with everything possible, you would have to get this far to the disassembly. We highly recommend, if that's something you do want to do, that you go ahead and just order the extra RAM during the checkout process, and we'll take care of ripping the system apart, upgrading it for you, putting it back together, and keeping it covered under warranty. So one last sweeping shot of all the parts laid out everywhere. This was a really fun system to work on today. We were not disappointed with it, and we hope that you weren't either. Now, of course, this is going to be the end of our review. We do hope that you enjoyed the video, found it educational and entertaining. Hopefully it answered any questions you might have had about the MSI GT63 Titan, but if it didn't, of course, you can still get more information pretty easily just at your fingertips. Down in the comments section below, you can ask any general questions you might want to have answered. We'll answer those for you and everybody else. If you're looking to get some one-on-one support, feel free to contact us by phone or email. We'll always be happy to get to you and help you out with those questions. And don't forget to go down into the video description and find the product page link. There you can find the current pricing and availability and, of course, the full system specs. So we hope you enjoyed our full-length feature review of the MSI GT63 Titan. And once again, we just want to remind you, this was GenTech PC, and we'll see you next time.